Welcome to another episode of Final Cut Pro Help Live. My name is Jared, and I'm going to be showing you some stuff today related to motion graphics. We talked about motion a little bit in the last stream, and you want more of it, so we're going to give you more of it. And in this stream, I'm specifically going to be talking about how the process works from getting from Final Cut Pro to Motion, creating a graphic. We're going to create a simple call-out title, and then returning to Final Cut Pro and what that process looks like. We are going to use a tracker as well, and let me bring up a screen here. I'll show you what this looks like because this is cool. We like to kind of create things out of nothing in these videos here, as opposed to spending a whole bunch of money on plugins and other things. So this is the clip that we have and we're going to use. You'll notice we have a very simple box with some text over it, and it's tracking that snowboarder as he's going down the hill. So that's what we're going to create today using Motion, and we are going to round trip back and forth. I'm going to show you the whole process, and I know in other videos we've left out some of the steps. Hopefully we won't do that in this stream. If you do have any questions as this stream is going through, you need clarity on something, go ahead and put it down in the chat, and I'll swing back around towards the end of the stream to answer it. So starting up, here we are inside of Final Cut Pro 10, and I'll just show you what we have on the timeline here. If I play this, we have one clip here. It's going to cut to the second clip, and in the second clip, that's the one we're going to be using during this stream to add a title to it. And then we're going to go to Motion and back again. So here's the clip we're going to go and use. Notice the snowboarder's carving down the hill here, and we want to bring a little bit more attention to him because he's a little bit small in this clip. So we're going to use a call out title to do that. Now there are many plugins on the market that you can go and purchase to make this call out happen. Many of those plugins also have a tracker built into them, so you can do everything here inside of Final Cut. However, if you want a little bit more control and have a little bit more time to spend, I recommend going and purchasing Motion, which is in the US here, it's a $50 app that is sold by Apple, and you can get it from the App Store. And Motion allows you to create many different types of motion graphics from scratch, including the one that we're going to use here today. So the first step is to create some kind of media that we can use inside of Motion. And right now, I think this is more of a weakness of the connection between Final Cut and Motion. In older versions, you could actually kind of nest things in, and it worked pretty well. But here's what I need to do. I need to get this clip into Motion in order to be able to use it. So I'm going to use Command Plus just to zoom into this section of the clip here. You can just click on it to select the clip, or if you have multiple clips, you can go to the beginning, press the letter I to set an in point, go to the end of the clip and hit the letter O to set an out point. That creates a range around the clip that you want to use in Motion. We now want to export this clip out into it so we can get it over to Motion. So I'm going to go up to the Share menu, and I'm going to export it using the master file share destination. And in the share settings here, you want to review this, make sure it is sending out what you actually need. You can go into the settings menu here and choose what it's sending. You could choose under format, just video only under the mastering section if you don't need the audio. I'm going to send over the audio anyway, but you can eliminate the audio there if you know that you don't need it if you're just trying to create a graphic. I like to use under video codec the source media. Again, you can change this if you're looking for the highest resolution and quality clip, you could do that. However, in this case, the source is going to be fine for the purposes here. I don't need any chapter markers to go out, and under action, I don't want it to open QuickTime. I'm going to choose to save only. Click on next, and in the little pop-up menu here, I'm going to choose a name and choose where I'm going to save this. I am going to save it into the movies folder, but I'm going to give it a name, and it's important that you name your clips for this process. We're going to be creating a clip, in this case right now, to send to Motion, and then we're going to create another clip when we're done that's coming back from Motion. And you want to make sure you keep track of those clips, and when you name your clips here, it helps you keep things organized. So this is going to be my clip going to motion. And maybe you have a number that's associated with the clip. You can put that in there. So we'll say this is clip 89 and it's going to motion. You can put parentheses on this, however you want to keep track of those. But then I'll hit save. And at the top left corner, you have your background tasks window. You can click on that to keep track of that export. This one happened pretty quick. It's a very short clip, so it happens pretty quickly. The one other thing I wanted to note here, when you do go to share it, let me bring up that window. Notice at the bottom here, we are sharing just that range. So that's important that you just double check this. Make sure it is only the range of that clip that you're sending out, which in this case is about 11 seconds, instead of the entire project, which may be a couple minutes or longer. We want to send just that one clip. Okay, so now we have our clip, so we're going to switch over to motion. In this case, I'm just going to minimize Final Cut using the yellow dot at the top left there. And here I am in motion. And for this purposes, we are going to be creating a new motion project. And I just want to take a second to say that you might be wondering, we're just creating a title. Why not create a Final Cut title? That way you can always access it from inside of Final Cut Pro. But the purposes of this title, we actually want to use the motion tracking that's built into motion, and we can't publish the motion tracking like you can with other parameters. So that's where we're just going to create a motion project under the blank templates here. This is just a composition, and that's what we're going to use for this purposes. On the right side, we do want to make sure we're using a preset that matches our video. And in this case, I am using a project that's broadcast HD. If you don't know what setting to use here, you can click on the desktop so you're in the Finder. Use Command N to make a new Finder window. I'm going to use Shift Command H to go to my home folder, click on Movies, because that's where I know I exported clip 48. And if you use Command I to get information about that clip, you'll see all of the information for that clip. Under More Info here, we can see the dimensions, we can see the codec, color profile, all kinds of things here. But specifically, I want my preset to match my dimensions, which in this case is going to be a broadcast HD 1080 clip, because the second dimension there is 1080. If I look a little bit further down in motion, you can see the resolution down here that's being created. So make sure you're matching those settings. It just makes things easier. Same thing with frame rate. You want to make sure your frame rate's matching as well, which is fine here in this case. Cool. And then the last thing is we do have duration there. So you can change your duration in this window when you go to create your project. I'll also show you in a second how to change that later. So I have it set at 16 seconds, but that's going to be too long. So let's go ahead and click on open, and I'll show you how to change that duration. So here we are in motion. One of the first things I always do is click in the viewer here, right now this big black area, and I do Shift Z to fit that viewer into the frame, which now it does. You can also go up to the percentage here and choose fit. And we want to bring in our media. So I'm going to use Command Tab to switch over to the Finder. Here's my Finder back here where I went to that clip, so I already have it selected in the Movies folder, and I'm just going to drag that into this column here, which is our layers, and drop it in there. Because I dropped it down in the empty space, we have a new group, which is just group 1 with that clip in it. I'm going to double click on our group 1 here and rename this group, and this is just going to be our video clip. So I'm going to name it video clip, and please go through and name your stuff. I know this sounds like something that may not be worth your time here, but trust me, this organization is really important there. And then this extra group that was here, I can just click on it, hit delete to remove that group. And my video looks pretty good. I'm not actually going to be changing the video too much, but we do need to do some stuff with behaviors on this clip, so we will be working with that. But then down on the timeline here at the bottom, you can see our clip. You can also click on the clip and use the mini timeline under the viewer to see it as well. And in this timeline, I can see the clip ends right over here. So moving my playhead to that spot, I can use the right arrow or left arrow to go back and forth to see where the end of this clip is. And really right here is the end of it. So I'm going to use Option Command O to set an out point right there, and my play range out point. I can see in the middle here, Let me zoom into it. On my time code, I'm at 11 seconds and 10 frames. So let's modify the project duration to be 11 seconds and 10 frames. You can click on this little button to the right of it to see the play range, which right now is 16 seconds, but I actually want it to be 11 seconds and 10 frames. So with that selected, I can do 11 seconds and 10 frames. So 11, 10, and I'll hit return. And notice now my project duration is 11 seconds and 10 frames. And if I scrub through it, it's the entire clip. So that looks pretty good. You can go into the inspector as well with the project layer here selected. And under inspector properties, you can also see all the settings for your project here, including the duration. So if you need to adjust that there, you can. Okay, so we have our clip in here. If I hit the space bar, it'll play that back. Motion is designed to be a real-time motion graphics application, so you can edit these graphics in real time. However, it is a pretty complex app, what we're doing here, so don't be surprised if on your computer it lags a little bit and you have playback issues. There are many settings under the view menu at the top right here and the render menu that you can adjust to make playback a little bit quicker. But just keep that in mind that Motion is a very complex app. Now, as such, unlike Final Cut's autosave features, Motion does not have that, so make sure that you're saving your project frequently. Right now at the top center, I can see it's an untitled project. Over on the left side, I see this little dot inside the red circle. That means I haven't saved this project in its current state. So I'm going to use Command S to save this. And I'm going to call this my callout. This is a callout title that we're creating here. So I'm going to call it my callout title. And I'll just say for clip 48. And then hit save. All right, so now we've saved that project. So periodically as you're editing this, make sure to hit Command S to save this. It's very possible that this closes or crashes or has some kind of issue as we're working on it. And if you haven't saved it, all of those things that you did in between the last time you saved are gone, which is not a fun thing to go through. So I do want this snowboarder here to have a title attached to him, because I want to know who this is. I want to put it in a name and track this person as he's going down the hill here. So Motion has a tracking system built into it, which is really cool. So on your timeline here, go to the beginning of your clip, then select the clip in the Layers tab, go up to the Behaviors tab, and you'll notice we have a whole category here for motion tracking. And right now, I just want to analyze the motion of this snowboarder. So I'm going to click on Analyze Motion. In our layers, notice it adds that behavior to our clip. And we see the clip over in the inspector here. And then in the viewer, we have a tracker. That's what this little red thing is. This is our tracking point. And so we need to click and drag this onto the point we actually want to track, which in this case is the snowboarder. And I'm going to track from his head here right on the helmet. So I just drag it over. We get that little red box popping up to help zoom into the spot, and the little yellow crosshairs in the middle, that's specifically the point that it's going to be tracking. So we'll use his helmet there. We zoom out and notice in our Behaviors tab here, we have Analyze Motion, and we see that pop up there. So now what we're going to do is click on the Analyze button to actually analyze that motion. And because we moved the playhead to the beginning of the project, it's just going to analyze it straight from that point on. If you didn't move the playhead, make sure to move that to the beginning, and then you can hit Analyze. You can also analyze in reverse. So if you moved it to the end of the project, you could do it the reverse way. One little side note about motion, top right corner, you have a HUD button. You can click on the HUD, which is our heads-up display, and it'll pop up a little window that allows you to see some of the most commonly accessed controls. So don't hesitate. You can also use the HUD for a lot of what we're doing here inside of Motion. And in this case, if I want to analyze the motion, I can just click on the Analyze button, and it goes and starts to analyze that motion. What you'll see is a couple things are happening. In the viewer, we see the actual path that it's creating and where it's tracking that. Because I have the keyframes visible in our animation section on the timeline here, I can actually see all the keyframes it's creating as it's tracking our snowboarder as he's going down the hill there. So we let it analyze, and this is a processor intensive task. So if you have a slower computer, this may take a long time, or if you have a much more complex scene, this could take longer as well. If it doesn't track it correctly, or maybe the snowboarder was to go off screen, we would lose the tracking, and you'll see a little X come up. You might have to make additional changes to your tracker and how you're analyzing if that's the case, or if it's too complex of a scene, it may not be able to track correctly. I have another video on this channel that goes into more detail on how to use this analyze motion in the tracking. I'd recommend checking that out if you have additional questions with that. Cool. So now we've tracked some motion here. That was a pretty complex task. I don't want to lose those steps. I'm going to hit Command S to save the project. And now I actually want to create our title. So I'm just going to create a pretty basic call out title here, nothing too complex. I'm going to have a box around our snowboarder here just so you can see where he is. We'll have a line going out of the box and then a title around it. So down at the bottom center here, I have a couple tools for creation. I'm going to use this little box on the left side here to create a rectangle, and I'll just click and drag on our project to cover up the snowboarder there. That creates the rectangle. I can see on the left side, we've created a new layer that has the rectangle there, and this will be our outline, or our box outline, I'll call it, because it is just going to be an outline. Now, I don't like that it's in the video group, so I'm just going to drag this up above the video group, and notice that green plus lets us know it's going to create a new group with this layer. So now I have a new group, and this will be the actual title in here and the various components for that. All right, so I have my box outline here. I'm going to go into the shape tab of the inspector here. And again, you can hit the HUD too to see some of those controls, and feel free to use the HUD as well. But in this case, I'm going to go into the inspector under the shape tab. And I see right now it's just a white fill color. Don't like that. I'm going to uncheck fill and check my outline. I'm going to increase the width of this outline, make it about 20 or so. 18, that looks pretty good. And right now it's a white outline, which on this mountain that's covered in snow, that's a lot of white. The box can get covered up pretty quickly there. So let's just change this to black, and that way we have our black box following our rider as he's going down to the hill here. Now, obviously right here, he goes outside of the box there, so that's not going to work too well. But let's adjust the size of this box and kind of where it's at. So I can double click on the box and adjust it. And we're just adjusting all of this first frame here to create this initial call out title. Now, in addition to that, I want a line coming out of the box. So I can go down here to my shapes. If I click and hold on the rectangle tool there, I can change it to the line tool. And now I'll click and drag up to create a line. Go back into the inspector under outline. I can hit the color box here to change that to black. And the width is 10. I'm going to double click on that number, hit 18, and return to up the size of it. It might be hard for you to see here, but if I click on our zoom and go up to like 800% and then go down a little bit, notice how the line here has a little tail on there sticking down. So the line is overlapping. I don't like that, so I'm going to select the line and use the arrow up key while holding command. If you do command up, kind of nudges that graphic up a little bit. So that way it's on the black there. That way you don't see the extra on there. And I'll click anywhere back in the viewer and do Shift Z to fit this back in the screen. So I have a box, a line, looks pretty good. Now let's add some text, our actual title. So I'll click the text tool underneath the viewer here. Click anywhere in the canvas, and then we can put our text here. So this might be the rider's name might be in there. So I'll type rider's name. I'll do Command A to select that text. In the inspector, maybe I want this to be bold text. I do want the color to be black as well, so I'll click on Appearance. Notice we have our face color here, and you could click the box here. You can also hit the little drop down to quickly select a color, and I'll hit black over there. So now we have our rider name. That looks pretty good with the rider name selected under the Layout tab. You can do some different things with rearranging where this text is and how it's interacting with your kind of with your title there. So we do have options here for position that we can change for the anchor point, and the anchor point is what it actually connects to. So you can adjust that stuff. We have things like the type on parameter, so we can have things animated if we wanted to. All kinds of fun stuff there. But in this case, it's a pretty simple title. I just want it right above the arrow, so I'm just going to click and drag that down above the arrow there, or a line. Cool. So I'm pretty happy with that. Obviously, it's a very quick title that we created, so you can spend a lot of time refining the way that this looks. But for a general first starting point, I think that's pretty good. So now what I want to do is I want all of this to track and move with our rider, because right now if we skim through this, the rider's over on the right here, the box is not. So to utilize our tracker that we use that analyze motion to analyze it. We can actually move the rider. So if I select just the box as an example, I can go up to the behaviors tab, go down to motion tracking, and there's an option here to match move, meaning basically match the movement of something on here. So I'm going to add that behavior to our box outline. And when you do that, you might see there's a tracker that it adds, and it does all kinds of stuff here in the inspector for you to analyze that motion. But we've already done that. So in our layers, I can just go down to the analyze motion we've already used and drag this right into our source, because we don't need to do another tracker. We've already done that. We can utilize that. And that's it. Now, if I play this back, what you're going to see is the box moves with our rider, but the rider name and the arrow and the line there doesn't move around. So it's kind of close, but really I need everything in this title group to do that match move. So I'm going to move this behavior up onto the title group. That way, instead of affecting just the box, this is going to affect everything. It's going to impact all three of these layers instead of just one of them. Now you'll notice when I did that, it reset the source. So I just need to drag my analyze motion into this well here to drop that in. You can also use the drop down arrow to select it. Cool. But now if I play this back, hit the space bar, looks pretty good, right? We have our rider name at the top there, which we can change at any point. We have the box tracking our rider, and that's how we create a nice little title there. So I'm going to hit Command S to save this again. Now I want to go back to Final Cut. So we've created something in a motion here. We like it. We're going to go back to Final Cut. So we need to share this back. I'm going to go up to the share menu, and there's an option here, just like Final Cut, to export your movie. And we get a little pop-up, and just like before, you want to make sure this stuff matches. So under the settings tab, I can see what it's exporting. It's sending out right now video and only, which is fine. You could also do video and audio if you want to. Our video codec is set to H.264. This is something you should change and probably go to your same as source option. You can also go to some of these high-res versions that have alpha channels built into them if needed, but usually same as source. I find we're just using the source media the entire way through, should be fine. And then down here, we're sending out the entire project. And for action, I don't need it to open QuickTime. I can just do a save only. We'll review it when we're in Final Cut. I'll hit next, and we're going to save this. I'm going to save this one, in this case, onto the desktop. But again, like I mentioned earlier, make sure you name this so you know what this is. So this is our callout title, and this is for clip 48. And this is going to be from motion. And I also like to put on version numbers, so I'll usually put in like version 1 or version 1.0, something that so that you can keep track of it. As you get more and more used to the workflow, you can drop those off, but this is just, I'll show you where this comes up, but this is version 1, and I'm going to hit return to save that. And similar to Final Cut, Motion does have a background tasks area. It's in the lower right of the viewer. You just click on this little spinning circle here, and you can see your background tasks and where that export is. Cool, but yeah, now the export's finished. So I'm gonna hide Motion using Command H. I'm gonna go down to my dock here and click on Final Cut, bring that back. And now we need to bring in that clip and replace the one that's here on the timeline. So I know that clip's on the desktop. Wherever you saved it, just go to that folder, and you can just drag that clip from the folder right on top of the one in the timeline and drop it, and we're going to choose to replace it. Just that first option there. Hit replace, and because it's the same duration, nothing else should change in the project, really just that one. And if I play back this clip, notice there we have our title there. It's on that clip, and we're able to see that and work with it. Now, unlike a published template that you would get from your templates browser, the downfall to this is we don't have any controls. If I click on this clip and go into the inspector, you'll notice there's no published parameters, there's no controls for this because it's just a motion composition. It's just a QuickTime movie. It's not editable. So if I want to actually change this rider name, I need to go back to motion to make that change. So as you're making these changes and adjustments, I mean, this is something that's, this is your first version that we made. It's very straightforward. So if I want to make changes to it, I'm just going to use Command Tab to tab back to motion. Here I am inside of motion, and maybe I want to change the rider name to actually put in a name there. So we can select that text, go into the inspector, under text, under format. Here's our rider name. You can also double click in the viewer there. But then here's where you would put in the name. So I'm just going to put in a placeholder there for now. I also think that this black text is a little bit hard to see. So let's go ahead and create a little background around this text. We'll just click and drag a background here. Right now this white rectangle is above the name, so I'll just drag this below it. And then maybe we want, under geometry, want some rounded corners. We could do that as well. And there we have a nice little pretty generic background to the name in there, but I've put one in there. And because it's part of this group, I don't even have to do anything else. It's going to track it with the same tracker that's back there. So that's on there. Looks pretty good. I'll do Command S to save the project. I can use Command E to export the project. Under settings, I'm just going to verify it didn't change anything. Notice it's all the same settings as before, so I don't need to change anything there. I can hit next. I'm going to save it back to the desktop as well. And you can actually just click on these names to match the name. So I'm going to click on this because it is still from motion, and I'll just call this version 2 in this case. And hit save, and now it's going to export that and send that out. I'm going to use Command H to hide motion. And back here, right back into Final Cut. And then I have my version 2 now on the desktop, so I'll just click and drag that on top of our clip that was there before. Now, earlier we did replace. I want to call out another feature of Final Cut here that says replace and add to audition. So this is kind of cool because we can just do replace and add to audition. And just like before when we did replace, everything looks about the same, right? I can play this back, and there I see the new name is in there, the white outline is there. We're starting to look pretty good. But because I added it to an audition, I can actually hit this little spotlight icon in the top left of the clip, and this opens up the audition to see the two versions. So now you're able to see, here's the original version we had, how hard it was to see the text there because it's almost blending into the mountain, and then version 2. So I can see both of those versions using the audition feature inside of Final Cut. And if you're working with a client, they might say, hey, can you try this? Can you try maybe putting a green outline around the box? You can say, okay, I could try that, but I know that's probably not going to look good and you're not going to want to do it. But they'll say, try it anyway. So we can Command Tab back to motion. We can select our white box here, go under Style. We'll create this hideous green outline that we know is not going to work, but the client wants it, so we'll do it anyway. We'll create it. It's there. I can hit Command S to save the project, Command E to export it, and I'll hit next. I know my settings are okay here. I'll hit next. I'll click on the version that's on the desktop here, version 2. I'll call this version 3. And if you want, you could put in something else in the name there. I'll hit return. Command H to hide motion. I'm back in Final Cut here. I'm waiting for a notification that it's created that clip. You can't see it on its primary display, but it showed up on my secondary display. And now I can click and drag that clip right onto the from the desktop onto our audition here. And I'll do again, replace and add to audition. And then boom, there we go. We see the green version, green outline there is there. The client reviews it. They say, of course, they don't like it. They want to switch it back. No big deal for you as the editor, because you can click the audition button and switch back to before you added that green outline there. And now we're back to our previous version of that graphic. Okay, so this is how you round trip from Final Cut with a clip, send it to Motion, make some title, do what you want there, and then send it back to Final Cut. And that's really all there is to it with those graphics. Now, this graphic is very, very simple. It's just a box with a name in it and a line there. If you want to have a little bit more control of the way that these things work, that's where you're going to get into working with templates and working with purchasing templates and other things that may have been provided to you. So if you're wondering why templates are expensive, why you're paying money for these things, it's because there's a lot of work that goes into them. Even if they are just created with Motion and there's no other programming that's needed, there's no other coding, even just that, there's a lot of work that goes into building these templates. So you kind of choose what's more important to you. Do you want to have the control that you get by doing it with Motion, like I've showed you here, or do you not want to waste time creating those graphics and use something that's pre-built? So there's tons of stuff out there, a whole ecosystem of templates that are already built for you, and trackers like this that can work much quicker than maybe what you can do here with this. However, because we've created this template, we have unlimited amount of controls available to us at any time just by using Command Tab to switch back to Motion. Here we are, we could start to create these things and work with them. Now, if you've spent a lot of time like we did here creating and building a title, you may want to convert this into a template that then you can use inside of Final Cut Pro repeatedly. We won't have our tracker that we created here, but we could create and have this title available to us. And to do that, it's very simple. Just go up to the File menu, go down to Convert Project to, and choose how you want to convert this. In this case, it's a title, so I'm going to click on Title. It asks me what's the source material, and I'm going to create a new placeholder for our source media here, and click on Convert. So now I have a title background here, and this is going to be the background clip. I no longer need this clip 48 because this title can now be used on anything. So I'm going to delete out clip 48. I can delete the whole video clip group actually in this case. And the animation with that match move is no longer needed either. It's just going to be this little call out title here. Maybe we want the outline to be black instead of green because that was just awful. And there we go. I can hit Command S and it's going to save this new template. So this will be our call out title. And we need to add it to a category. So I'm going to create a new category. And you can name these categories anything you want here. But these are the names that'll show up inside of Final Cut. And then hit Publish. Okay, so I've taken a motion composition that was our title, and now I've just created a template out of it. So if I hit Command Tab to switch back to Final Cut, notice in our titles browser here under @Final Cut Pro Help, we have a new category that we created. There's our call out title. And we can just click and drag this down onto another clip, and we have that there. Now looking at this clip that's here, I may want to change it and adjust how it looks here in the viewer. And right now I can double click on the text and I can change the text, but I can't really modify or adjust anything else that's in here. So that's where we're going to go back to Motion, and you're going to publish the parameters that you want available inside of Final Cut. So as an example, I might want to change the position of this box and where that shows up on the screen. So I can select the box and go into Properties, and I could publish the position of the box. And I just do that using the little drop-down menu to the right of the parameter that you want to publish. So I'll publish that one, and I'll also publish the line here because I want to be able to move around the line. And I could publish the position for that, but for the line, I'm actually going to go under shape, under the geometry category, and I'm going to publish the 2 control points instead. And you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. And I can hit publish, and now let's do Command S. I'll Command Tab back to Final Cut. If I select my current callout that I created, I don't see those published parameters here. So I do need to go into my templates and drag that callout title on top of the previous one there and hit replace. And now what we'll be able to see here is if I go into the publish parameters, you can see there's our position for our box. So I can adjust the box position. And I also have the control points, so I can change where the control points are for that line that's there. Right? And you can just continue to publish parameters and the things that you want access to inside of Final Cut here and build your own templates just like that. But I'd start out with a composition, like we saw with this clip. Start out with creating compositions and then convert and turn them into templates after the fact. All right, so I hope that gives you some more tips and some more steps that you can take to start building and expanding your library of knowledge on Final Cut Pro, on Motion, how that works to create those types of things. And if it seemed a little bit overwhelming, it is. I mean, that's just kind of how all this motion graphics stuff works. But it's also why there's a whole ecosystem of templates out there. So just go to apple.com/Final Cut Pro, click on the resources tab, and you'll be able to see where kind of, in my opinion, this ecosystem starts. There's many other people out there that are developing, but this is a good place to start. Under this first category here, either under the App Store or clicking Learn More, you'll see kind of the list of categories and some of the templates that are available out here. Much of this content is paid content. You won't get all this for free, but you can go in here and there's many trials and free examples that you can see, but you'll see some of the complex templates and tools that are there for you. And some of these can save you an enormous amount of time. In other cases, you may just want to use Motion, which is less expensive than buying all of these plugins together. Let's take a look at what's out there and what's on the web there for you to get those things. So hope that helps out and provides some answers and some direction there on how to round trip between Final Cut and Motion and how to use those tools together. If you do have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat there. If you're watching this on a replay, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications and you'll be notified when we do go live. Or send me a direct message on Instagram. Just go to instagram.com/Final Cut Pro Help and I'll be happy to answer questions there. If you don't get a response or you don't see the video, you don't get that answer, just follow up with me. All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day.